guys, it's Mark from Periphery here, and we have a record out called Periphery 3, Select Difficulty, and I wanted to break down one or two riffs from the song The Way the News Goes. So, by the way, the tuning that I'm using is dropped C. That's where the first 5 strings are dropped down a full step, and then the 6th string is down an additional full step. So you have a basically drop D, but a whole step down. So that's a fun, jumpy riff, and that was written, I was really jet-lagged and tired and out of my mind, so I was messing around with certain chord shapes, and this is the main chord shape that I was messing with. Sort of like a jovial sounding chord. I use that chord shape a lot, and I just sort of transpose it to fit on these 5 strings. The idea behind fleshing out the first part of that riff is just arpeggiating that first chord shape. So again, that's... And then when you make that slide down, it sort of leaves you in position to tackle the next chord shape, which is this one. So I started with this. So that's the second chord I wanted to get down to, and that slide sort of puts you in position to get there. And that's arpeggiating that chord shape. And again, that's another shape that I really like a lot. I use that in a lot of our songs. And you'll probably notice there's a high emphasis on open strings. And that's something that I like to utilize a lot to sort of give an impression of there being more notes or the riff being busier than it kind of really is. As you can see, when I break it down slow, it doesn't seem that complicated, but because of the pull-offs on the open strings, there's more notes being placed in the riff without there actually having to be fingers fretting them, which is kind of the reason I use a lot of open string pull-offs and sort of involving open strings and arpeggios involved in riffs. The second half of the riff starts out the exact same, and it sort of follows the same trend. Again, more open strings, and you're sort of fleshing out this one. When I'm having trouble writing a part, I'll pick out the chord shapes that I want to use. And instead of just playing the chords, I'll choose the chords first, and I'll figure out how I'm going to get from chord shape 1 to chord shape 2 to chord shape 3. And it makes it easier to sort of get from place to place if you know where your in-between points are going to be. You know, you can write slides, you can write moves to get from chord shape 1 to chord shape 2, and so on and so forth. So this is the second riff in the song. It's a pre-chorus riff from The Way the News Goes, so the same song. And this is almost an extension of the mentality I had when I was writing that first riff, was pick my chords and then write around that. So once I pick the progression in my head, then you can work out writing a sort of busy riff to outline the chord progression that's happening. Again, much like the first one, pretty jumpy and all over the place. At its core, the progression is like this. So very simple, almost sounds like a pop punk song or something. Very simple. But the fun part, and I say fun because it actually makes it more fun for me to write a busy riff, is to know, again, what my stepping stones are. And by stepping stones, I just mean the chords that I'm going to and from. Because again, that's just like the first riff, arpeggiating the chord. I'm not deviating off of that chord shape. And that note, you'll see it's a, I could easily just hit that open string to take care of that note. But the reason I slide down to it, one, because slides sound cool, and two, it leaves me in position to tackle the second chord. So that's why I slide all the way down the fretboard to make sure that I'm in a good position to fret that next bass note. And then all of a sudden I'm in this register and I'm ready to play the next section. And again, I'm just arpeggiating that chord. Now, of course, I'm using open strings. Again, another reference to the first riff in the song. I'm using open strings to sort of extend the passage a little bit more. Again, more open strings, and I love that dissonant, really. And then the second half, there's a slight variation in the way it begins. Again, that's the last chord in the progression. So again, I'm simply outlining the progression, but just sort of filling it in with the fun notey bits. Full speed. But again, I know it sounds really vague to say, writing notey bits is fun if I'm not explaining how I'm writing these parts, but when you know where you're going, it makes it way less intimidating. When you know that you're going to end up here as your last chord, the idea of writing a notey passage or like a fun, playful bit becomes way less daunting, and you can sort of get there by, again, just experimenting, finding out what sounds good. And again, I know it's very easy to say, but I'm not a theory guy. I have my own ways of crafting these parts. But yeah, I would highly recommend it to anybody who's having trouble writing a riff, is just try and pick out a progression first, and then outline it to sort of fill in and make it sound a little bit more playful.